Hello everyone, welcome to your Tuesday night edition of the TII podcast. My name's Craig Dennett and I'm your host this evening once again, and I'm joined by JB to talk all about the latest Rangers news and transfer rumours following Sunday's 2-2 draw with Club Brugge. How are you doing, JB?
Yeah, not too bad. I feel a bit like Dami, a chef, as if just getting talking about transfer speculation. But no, we'll miss it once the window's shut, won't we? So we'll enjoy it while we can and waste many hours on YouTube pretending that you're a football scout. So yeah, no, it's good to talk about it, if nothing else.
Absolutely, and it's always good that we have more to talk about just 2 days after the last podcast as well. So that's always the positive of the transfer window as we move through this. There's new stuff every day. There's new links. There's new rumours, and there's new suggested movements as well. So we'll get stuck into sort of the latest news and then into the transfers, particularly the striker side of things, because there's been some big names linked with us in the last couple of days. JB, Rangers travel to St George's Park today for a bit of a mini camp over the course of this week. A few other teams are there as well. I believe Sheffield Wednesday being one, Sevilla being another that are there. Must be some size of place down there, but it's going to be a positive week. I think I think Russell Martin basically said that the team would spend all the time together, all getting to know each other, all getting to understand each other better, getting to understand him better, all of that sort of stuff. So it can only be a positive, I think, as we move forward towards the start of new season. There's been a bit of discussion about what matches do we have coming up as well. Obviously, Panathinaikos on the 22nd of July, but it didn't seem like there were any friendlies arranged between then and now. Russell Martin said there was at least one while they were away. We've then seen some discussions this morning around a behind closed doors friendly against Dunfermline on, it's a week tonight, I think, actually, a week today. But what do you make of the fact that Club Brugge on Sunday will be our only friendly in front of fans before we take on Panathinaikos? Fair enough, the players will have time in these behind closed doors games to get used to each other, to get the minutes in the legs, etc. But what do you make of the balance between behind closed doors and in front of fans?
Yeah, I think this year more than any other year, it's been really difficult for the club to probably arrange to get teams to actually probably players. If you think about it, in terms of Club Brugge, they've got European games coming up over the next few weeks. So the pool of clubs that you can actually look at is quite small because most players are still on the beach. Do you know what I mean? And any players that were on international football are only just coming back to us. Now, if they're going back to other clubs, then it's going to just have that knock-on effect week by week. You look at the Club World Cup, that's still ongoing. That is technically still last season.
Yeah.
Just as I said on the pod the other day, we're just in that really unique situation that we're so far ahead of the game when it comes to this thing. Normally, we haven't got that extra qualifier, so it's another couple of weeks before we have to start worrying about getting back to competitive games. So I just hope that this is what the manager needs is the time on the training ground. He is definitely going to be changing the way that we play. We're going to be implementing a style. The only concern for me is there's potentially going to be more players at St George's Park this week that are going to be leaving than are going to be staying, which isn't ideal. Again, our signing policy all links into we've got a few through the door already, but the ones that aren't through the door yet, hopefully we can get them in over the next couple of days, because as you touched on at the start there, really important that the players start to get to know each other and start to understand Martin's methodologies and what the stuff that he's wanting to do and style of play and all of these things. So yeah, hopefully it's going to be a busy week both in and out.
What do you make of I guess there's an obvious difference between playing in front of fans and playing behind closed doors. We've heard players before talk about the intensity's lower when you're not playing in front of fans versus when you are. Is that a concern as we head towards obviously what's a huge match straight off the bat against Panathinaikos?
I think so. The only thing is it's a good time to be to probably be flattening out a little bit. So in terms of the players might be running more than they've maybe run in front of fans, whereas the fans are expecting players to probably do a little bit more on the ball. So you'd imagine closing down is going to be 100-mile-an-hour substitution. It will probably be a bit more relaxed in terms of substitutions. In terms of making subs, it probably will be a little bit more stop start. I think if you remember back to the Ajax game that we played in the middle of a terrible field. Was that, I always get mixed up, was that last year or the year before? But it was that was very stop starting. You could almost tell as if the club wouldn't have wanted that going out on camera, but it was last minute. I think they threw it on and said, "Oh no, we'll kind of show it." It was at a junior park in Holland, so just outside of Amsterdam. So I think in terms of that, yeah, I don't think you can replicate playing in front of fans and certainly playing at Ibrox. The players did get a flavour of Ibrox the other day. I'm not saying all of them would have enjoyed it, especially the first half with the reaction. But again, that if anybody did need reminded whether the players were sitting in the stands or whether the players were making the debuts, they know what they've signed up for now. Do you know what I mean? They're going to know that the demand is expectation is that high. You can imagine the players after the game saying, "Can you believe that halftime reaction?" Like, and then other people remind me, yeah, this is the expectation in terms of performance. So, yeah, ideally would have liked to have seen a couple more games. I think we spoke about it on one of the pods the other week. The best we've looked in pre-season for years was when we went to that tournament in France.
Yeah,
We seemed to look really, really good. Was it Lyon and was I want to say
Nice,
Nice? Nice was
Nice,
it? Yeah.
yeah,
I did think Jamie Burjonis was going to be the next Wayne Rooney after that. That was the only thing, but you could see the players looked super focused. They looked really up for it. It was a good quality of opposition, albeit there was a string of changes in across all the 3 or 4 clubs that were involved there, and there was limited fans as well. It was
yeah.
I'm right in saying it was COVID, wasn't it? So I think it was only their equivalent of the NHS and emergency services that were there. But no, that obviously Rangers fans managed to blag their way in, pretending that they were French doctors and all sorts. But it was no, that was kind of the last time I've kind of felt going into the season. Right, we look up for it. Even if you think about after we won the league, we then played Real Madrid and beat them. So it just probably goes to show it that's not necessarily the opponent you need to worry about. But I think these behind closed door games, I think will be really interesting. It wouldn't surprise me if we play Sheffield Wednesday, and it wouldn't surprise me if we maybe have a tie-in with Sevilla as well. I know that hasn't nothing's been announced on that one yet. But I think in terms of if there's teams there looking for a game, I think that'll be a worthwhile exercise because at this stage of the season, you're just wanting to blow the cobwebs off.
Yeah.
All the lads can all play football. Do you know what I mean? They all know how to kick a ball. They all know how to run. It is just a case of getting them, getting the breathing back in, getting the lungs fit and ready. Because we're going to have to be ready for Panathinaikos.
We are absolutely going to have to be ready for Panathinaikos. And after the game on Sunday, Russell Martin did say the squad's going to look completely different in a week's time, and it'll look even more different in 2 weeks' time before Panathinaikos game. So it'll be really interesting to see what moves we see this week. I was actually kind of hoping we'd see 1 or 2 and over the last couple of days, but it's not been the case. I think one that does seem to be edging closer and closer is the signing of centre back Gia from Wolves. Given the location of St George's Park and where he's coming from in terms of Wolves, it's not a long journey for him to make there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that one coming over the next couple of days. And centre half, JB is definitely an area we need to strengthen, especially after watching that first half against Club Brugge last week.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I actually think that's probably part of the problem that the club have got at the moment. I know last week we were speaking about Connor Cody. As far as I'm aware, Connor Cody was fully expecting to sign for Rangers on the 1st of July. That had been agreed for a number of months, not necessarily even weeks. But whether that is being held up because of players not leaving the club quick enough, I think there's only so long you can carry X amount of players. Because if you think about all the players that are due to leave, I think me and my dad clocked the other day, you're probably looking at about £200,000 worth of wages that are potentially going out the door over the next few weeks. If you then add in another £200,000 worth of wages whilst you're waiting for them to go out the door, it's unsustainable. So the new owners aren't going to be silly. They're not going to say, right, yeah, we'll just pay for all this money and just in the hope that everything's ideal. But what happens if you don't get rid of them? What happens if Proper doesn't go to 20? What happens if Leon King doesn't leave or go out on loan? What happens if Yilmaz doesn't go? All these guys that you've got the list, your Cifuenteses, your Dals, your Ben Davises, the list kind of goes on and on. Your Rabbi Matondos, who I know has obviously got an injury. So all of these guys due to go out the door on big money. I suspect is what is slowing things down. But again, it all links back to that piece of clubs aren't back yet, so therefore they're not in a great rush to do the deals. So you do wonder whether some of the guys who got game time the other day, was that with a view of, you kind of put a little bit of a cherry on top of a club to say, this guy's already played 45 minutes of pre-season, he's ahead of the game for you, come and take him for us. Again, I think the players going out this summer is just as important as the players coming in.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. And one that was rumoured earlier in the day to be going out the door, and I think the door was slammed fairly shut on that. Slammed shut on that fairly quickly, was Leon King. Rumours that, or suggestions that he was really close to signing for Wycombe Wanderers down in England, but it appears to be off as we speak because of personal terms. Leon King was linked with the likes of Manchester United, Newcastle as well. I think a few years ago, we upped his wages to rumoured to be around £10,000 a week, and then all of a sudden he's not made it. He's not nowhere near the standard we need him to be, and he's not going to go anywhere that will pay him £10,000 a week either. I think, which is so you can't blame him for sitting on that wage for as long as he can. But there does come a point where I think if you're in his shoes and you're entering at about 10 to the last sort of year and a half of your contract, you're going to start to look to play more football.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I'm what age is he now? Is he 21, 22, there or thereabouts?
Yeah.
So in terms of that, you just wonder whether he's looking at it and going, my career can start in 2 years' time once this contract expires. Do you know, like, he's young enough to probably be in a position to do that. Now, what type of club he'll end up at after that, we'll just have to wait and see. I think it's been a real shame that this one just hasn't worked. I actually remember when he signed the new contract, and I was actually buzzing because you start to think, right, there's the next long-term Rangers captain, ticking all the boxes. I think he was bigger than everybody else at kind of youth level. Watched him coming through the ranks, always perform well for the 17s, 18s, 19s, captain of the 21s, I believe, with some really good talent round about him as well. And you've just thought, right, it'll just be a matter of when he kicks in. Really unfortunate in terms of probably might be the right place, wrong time in terms of when he kind of broke into the squad, and that year in the Champions League was pretty horrendous, and not being helped with being stuck next to James Sands in some pretty high profile games. Was pretty heartbreaking when you look back at it. But he's just never really kicked on, has he? I don't think he's physicality. I don't think he's ever progressed. He seems to be, I mean, I've never looked at it, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's the same height when he was 14 to what he is now. He's never got that extra yard of pace that you normally get as you kind of grow into an athlete, which is a real shame. And yeah, I always thought, well, I wonder whether he'd have been ever better getting played in a six, in terms of getting him into the pitch, getting him involved in the type of games that we have. I always remember Bob Malcolm. Had a pretty half decent Rangers career in terms of the time that he was with us, and he eventually rolled into a number six and done okay, quite comfortable on the ball, could ping a pass, and went on to have a half decent career. But you just hope he's still, as I say, with King, you just hope he's young enough that he can re-find himself. You've only got to look at John Fleck, who was mentioned. I heard that earlier in terms of a really good comparison of somebody that was going to be the next big thing. Now, albeit John Fleck, I think maybe got a season and a half or two under his belt under Walter, but he went down to England and went on to have a really good career. So not naturally with anyone like one of your own, you want him to go on and do well, but he's definitely in the wrong movie at the moment, and both him and Robin Proper on Sunday first half was just an example of what bad looks like. So upgrades massively needed, and the names that you've touched on in terms of Njiga, Connor Cody, the big Fernandez is in. So I think it's definitely going to look a lot fresher than what we've seen the last few weeks.
Yeah, there's we've had the FC20 chairman, I think, come out, our chief exec come out and say he doesn't have an update on Robin Proper because there's not been any movement on it. They seem keen to get the deal done, so it seems a bit strange, JB, doesn't it, that it seems to be stalling on our side.
I think, I mean, if you're a businessman at 20, you know that Rangers want rid of this player. Do you know what I mean? For all we know, they bid 500,000 and just said, right, suck it up, lads. Whereas we might be holding off for more like 1 million or 1.5 million, whatever that might be. But given the position that we're in, I'm led to believe he's not on massive wages. I think he's on about 12 grand a week. So therefore, I don't think wages are going to necessarily be an issue. He's naturally going to be able to slip back. He was the club captain at 20, so I imagine he'll be welcome back. In a league and an environment that probably suits him a lot better in terms of his playing style. But whether the Rangers are just showing their teeth a little bit, felt as if from a fan's perspective, we kind of just want it freshened and just done. But Rangers, the way the club's being run at the moment, do we want another summer like last year where it was your Cantwell, Lammers, handful of others who went out for absolutely next to nothing?
Yeah.
And you look back and all of them players went on to kind of do okay. I mean, the Lammers one was ridiculous. If you look back, now he didn't go on to have a great season. I think he got off to quite a good start. I think he might have just scraped double figures, but he was breaking records in Holland in a short spell of time. So
Yeah.
you just wonder whether that would have been in normal circumstances. If your club was run properly, you probably would have been able to get a few extra million for him alone. The Cantwell situation was a farce. If you look at the kind of the value that he's had and gone down to Blackburn, then what did we get, 800,000 for the 4 or 5 of them?
Yeah.
Scott Wright, was he included in them
Goldson's in
numbers as
there
well?
as well. Yeah.
Goldson. I mean, so you just wonder whether the club are going, we're not doing that again. So we're going to hold on to your Dessa's price, your Egerman price, your proper price, all of your Dow, your Davis's. If there are bids, you just wonder whether we're just being unbelievably lowballed. But at some point, we're going to have to potentially bite the bullet. But as I say, these other clubs aren't in a rush to bring these guys in because they can wait another couple of weeks and just kind of just show a bit of a poker face to Rangers because everyone knows the situation that we're in because of how
Yeah.
public it is.
I think that's fair. What Gibson 97 says, new owners seem to want to get the most value out of any player. Old board were poor with the business side. I think that's partly true. I think also in previous summers there's been so many guys that we've been absolutely desperate to get out of, and there was no sign of money coming in any other way for us to be able to spend. So we had to get them out to spend. And I think in this situation in this summer, it very much seems that we need to get them out so the squad size isn't humongous and you're not left with them at the end of the summer, rather than we need to get them out so we've got money to spend. And I think that's a very different type of motivation as we go into this, albeit with the same temporary result in terms of the players hanging about and still being part of the team. So it'll be interesting to see how that one developed. A new link today, JB, which potentially timely given we said they were at St George's Park as well, but linked with I'm going to go for JD Gasama, the Sheffield Wednesday attacker. Today, rumoured to be that he's quite happy at Sheffield Wednesday, but we could get him in a bit of a cut price deal. Is that it seems that we've now started to move up the pitch and we're very much moving towards the wingers and the forward line for that. Is that it's obviously what excites most people when they watch their team and where they want new signings to come. But
yeah.
have you heard much about Gasama yet, or is he kind of a fresh name that's that's not really seen or heard much of?
Yeah, the name kind of rang a bell, but probably just more from like Gillette Soccer Saturday, where a name pops up and then he might score a brace, and then you kind of, if you're watching the Championship highlights or something, you'll kind of look at. The big thing for me with this type of profile of player that we're looking at, I'm very much trying to link it back to Joe Aribo in terms of one players, if we're going to be going for it, for that type of profile of players who played a number of fixtures. I know on Sunday we called out a couple of examples of players who got really good numbers under the belt. So the boy at Crystal Palace, who was on loan at Charlton and Sheffield United, that kid's rocked in best part of 80 odd appearances. Excuse me, in the last 2 seasons. Is it Rakshaki or something there or thereabouts?
Something wrong with that.
So this guy, first thing I looked at, I wasn't necessarily looking at his goals and assists. I was actually looking at how many minutes that he'd actually played, and for such a young lad, I think last year he played 47 games, and the season before was 37 games. So again, in terms of what the expectations of what we need from players is having that level of robustness that they can come in. As we've said a few times, that's a really difficult league. The Championship, in terms of one, being able to compete, but two, with the level of athlete that's in that division. Now, these type of players were linked with and they've been playing in Serie B, or if they've been playing in the Argentinian league, everybody's heads will probably be falling off with excitement. I think because we've been burned so many times in the past with middle of the road English players. I do think in terms of the profile, it definitely looks as if we're going for youngsters who could potentially give us that spark and move to the next level.
Yeah.
That's the
What do
idea.
you make of that? Tommy's Cardigan says, I'm getting concerned by a number of English-based players coming in. It feels like we went through a period where all we did was sign English players from the Championship or players who were out of favour from the English Premier League. It then seemed to switch around 180, and all we did was sign players from European clubs.
Yeah.
And then it seems to have gone back again. What do you make of that and the number of English-based players that we do?
I think given where we are as a squad and as a team, we need players to be able to come in and understand what the expectation is very quickly. We are in I dare say the word rebuild again, unfortunately. You probably want a handful of players that can give you that little bit of a fresh spark. Do you know what I mean? In terms of your Igermans and your, I dare say, Oscar Cortez is this type of profile and player where you go, right, they've been somewhere else, completely left field. They're going to come in and they're going to give us that little bit of a spark. I think with these guys, it's almost a case of we need to get that skeleton of players that understand British football, they understand the situation. Let's have it right. There's money to be made with real strong performing British talent in terms of being able to flip it and rotate it. We've kind of modelled that with Aribo, with Bassi to a lesser extent. Now, obviously, I know there's the Nigerian internationalists, but in the main, but brought up in Great Britain, understanding what football's all about, understanding the kind of the size of ranges and everything else that comes with that and the pressures that they'll be under. These guys will be able to come in. There'll be no language barrier, which I think, again, if you think about the difference in terms of the culture that Martin's going to have to try and create. I know there's the football language. We haven't got time for football language. We've got to build a squad and a team that is ready for one, the Champions League qualifiers, but just as, if not more important, the first league game of the season, which is going to come up and bite us on the arse unbelievably quickly as well. Albeit we'll have a handful of European games under our belt by then. But these lads have got to come in and be ready for all the conditions that Scottish football is going to throw at them. And if I like the fact that we're looking at players that will be able to handle the physicality of our league. As much as we think the Scottish League is physical, League One and League Two is Championship and League One is far more physical. So if these guys have showed that they can perform in that environment, then I'm not too concerned. I think the extra levels of experience that are going to be needed to complement these lads is going to be interesting, and we're going to get onto a couple of the strikers shortly. But in terms of the profile of play, we're not going to sign all of these players we've been linked with. I know there was a boy who's just been released from West Brom. Is it Diananja? He's been linked again. Looking at the profile of him, he's rocked up 162 appearances across the Championship and English Premier League in the last 5 or 6 seasons. Albeit his numbers aren't fantastic, but again, there's numbers on the board there. So, and then there's the boy from Como that we've been linked with as well, another winger. So there's definitely a profile that we're looking. I think Russell Martin said, didn't he, in some of the fan media stuff, where's all the wingers? You know, like in terms of the profile of player that we've currently got. Because in terms of wingers at the moment, you're looking through the squad there. You've probably only really got Cortez. I mean, you could argue Ross McCausland, but I don't think you don't really pin too much on him. But Cortez is kind of the only one, and he doesn't look ready just yet either, which is rather worrying given the outlay that we've had on him. But I think it'd be far too soon to write him off. He's, again, young lad he's got the tools and he's shown in glimpses, he's got the ability. So he's one that we probably just need to put an arm around at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's go into the big names on the striking department that we've been rumoured with. Jamie Vardy's been a pretty long running one. There was obviously some reports from Italy that he turned down Genoa and he decided to sign for Rangers. Nothing's really more has come of that since that rumour over the weekend. One that seems to have come to the fore without much sort of build up behind it is Luuk de Jong. a big powerhouse of a striker that put us to the sword when he played for PSV. And he's played for a number of clubs, I think Sevilla, Barcelona, amongst them, and near Roma as well, I think. 34 years of age, I believe he is. Jamie Vardy's 38. Does look like we're in the market for that really experienced striker, JB. If I was given the option between Luuk de Jong and Jamie Vardy, I think I'm going Luuk de Jong all day long. Where do you stand on both of those players, first of all, and then the need for that kind of really experienced striker that's just a proven goal scorer?
Yeah, no, I think both of them are both very interesting. I think Luuk de Jong, you're probably looking to bring him in on a 2-year deal, whereas Jamie Vardy are probably more of a 1-year deal. The thing with Luuk de Jong, he's never had blistering pace, so he's not going to miss it. You've only got to look at Edin Dzeko was a real handful for us when we seen him over the 2 legs recently for Fenerbahce, and he's gone on and he's continuing to form into the kind of the twilight years. So I think someone like Luuk de Jong, I think, will be a really interesting pump for us. We haven't really had anybody of that ilk for quite a long time in terms of physicality, who can you can lay the ball up to him. He'll hold it up really well. I think he's a natural leader. He's obviously captain PSV now for the last few years. Looks like he's got a bit about him. He's got a little bit of that Dutch arrogance as well, which I don't think we could, which I definitely think we could do. He's got a bit of the shithousery as well. He was, he frustrated us quite massively after the second game the second set of games we played against them.
Yeah.
I know he was greeting in the first game when we knocked them out and saying how bad Rangers were and everything else that comes with it. So I'm sure somebody will dig them comments out eventually, but. Yeah, no, that one is interesting. The only thing I would say about that, the link, if I remember rightly, when it broke a couple of weeks ago, was a Dutch analyst that recommended that this is the type of player that Rangers should be looking for. Now, as we know, in speculation, these things can kind of grow arms and legs.
Yeah.
The Jamie Vardy one, I think, would be box office. It does give me potentially Joey Barton, Jermaine Defoe type vibes in terms of it catch a lot of eyes, and I do think he would be somebody. He's definitely a standard setter in terms of at Leicester. You could see how much he was hurting when they were really underperforming last year. I think he come out with a statement towards the end of the season. I think Roy Keane had a bit of a go of him for it, but you can see that he's super passionate, and I think he would never have played in front of a fan base like ours. So you can imagine somebody like that really thriving off that situation and probably be a really good one for players in and around some of the youngsters that we've got, whether Igamani remains, if Turgeman was to come in, he'd be a good foil for these type of guys because with both of them, you're not going to be looking at them to be playing 40, 60 games a season. I mean, but in terms of Vardy last year, he's rocked out 35 Premier League games. That's not easy. I know some of them would have been off the bench and stuff and potentially not necessarily finishing the 90, but that's some go and some commitment that he must have to put in to be able to be available for that amount of games at his age and in such a demanding environment as well, unless they weren't short of options as well. And then from a De Jong perspective, I think he's not rocked out about 47 games last year. So again, there's a real theme there of we don't seem to be targeting players who you go, oh, he's only played 17 games in the last 5 years, and some of this nonsense that we've had in previous seasons where you've gone, it's a massive punt if you think of the likes of Bacuna, even Cifuentes and a handful of others, Rabbi Matondo, Ben Davis. All of these guys hadn't played a lot of football prior to coming to join us. We've got to move away from that because these are the same guys that are picking up your injuries and they're out for your 4 to 6 weeks. So I'm all above the robust train. So let's do that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So if you have to pick one of the two, who are you going for?
Both. I'll go with for what we need in the style of football I think we're going to play. I'll go with Luuk de Jong. I think Jamie Vardy probably would have been more of the previous manager in terms of your counter-attacking style that we were really good at. But I think we're going to be very high pressing and we're going to be looking to pin teams back. And if we can have Luuk de Jong, Manny Fernandez, the boy from Wolves, trotting up when we've got corners and set pieces, I think it'll be a bit of an aerial threat as well in both ends.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. And you mentioned Dor Turgeman. He's one that I really hope that is still high up our list and is a real priority as soon as either Dessers or Igaman walks out the door. But just a final question before we wrap up on this shorter episode of the podcast. How important is it that there's that mix and that blend of experience and youth, especially in the forward line?
Most definitely, yeah. I think we need to have four. We need to have four goal scorers, four players that know how to play the position. It's bit us on the arse too many times where we've gone into big games without a striker. If you think about when we had to play Brian Kent a few years ago under Gerrard at Aberdeen in the semi-final, and Umar Sadiq come on late on. Seville, we had to play Joe Aribo up top. Last season at times it was when Dessers was having an absolute, when he was stinking the place out, there was kind of nobody that you'd look at and go, well, he's your next option. Do you know what I mean? We persisted with trying players out of position and all sorts. So yeah, I think if we could run with something like Miovski, who we haven't really spoke about much, but there's been another link there in the Macedonian press, a De Jong, a Turgeman, and I dare say Danilo is probably your fourth option. If there's an opportunity to get him out for a year on loan, I wouldn't be dismissing that. But you're probably not going to be in a position to be able to move too many, and not many clubs would probably take a risk on someone like that. So they're probably four very different strikers with different profiles, and we're going to need it. With all going well, we'll be heading into another 60-game season.
Yeah, fingers crossed. All right, I think we'll wrap up there. Just half an hour on these midweek podcasts with our full hour-long one on a Sunday. Thank you very much, JB, for joining us tonight. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. If you enjoyed the content, please do subscribe to the TII YouTube channel. It's already grown massively since we started out. With the new season of podcasts and pre-season. You can also subscribe on typical audio platforms such as Spotify, Apple Music, etc. Helps us out massively and means that you won't miss out on any of the great content we've got coming up. We'll be back on Thursday evening again, live at 7:30 p.m. So please do make sure you join us then. But until next time,